I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd puts a sheep before himself, sacrifices himself if necessary. A hired man is not a real shepherd. The sheep means nothing to him. He sees a wolf come and runs for it, leaving the sheep to be ravaged and scattered by the wolf. He is only in it for the money. The sheep don't matter to him. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and my own sheep know me. In the same way, the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I put the sheep before myself, sacrificing myself if necessary. You need to know that I have other sheep in addition to those in the pen. I need to gather and bring them too. They'll also recognize my voice. Then it will be one flock, one shepherd. This is why the Father loves me, because I freely lay down my life, and so I am free to take it up again. No one takes it from me. I lay it down of my own free will. I have the right to lay it down. I also have the right to take it up again. I received this authority personally from my Father.
Sheep love to be together in a flock. They operate well as a group, and they need each other, while a goat doesn't need anybody. He's quite happy climbing onto things. And so that's why this scripture is really quite important, and we're going to look at it in that type of context. A theologian tells of an old shepherd who would say, "Don't count the sheep, or else they won't thrive." Don't count the sheep, or else they will not thrive. What did he mean by that? He means that when you can't sleep at night, what do? Count sheep. Never works for me. But it's, one little fluffy thing over a fence, the next little fluffy thing over a fence. But they don't have names. They might have a number if you like Serta mattresses. But otherwise they're just images that go over the fence. But in this context, with Jesus and his flock, he knows each one by name. So just don't count the sheep as a conglomerate lot of people. Count them as individual people where you know your name. You know your name. And that's very, very important in all of this. It is not what we want. I don't want. If I'm going to do annual conference music, I want everybody to know who Andrew Wright is. You know what I mean? Not necessary, but I want them to know that I come from this congregation. I want people to know that we have an awful lot of fun. And just be somebody. I'll tell you one little story. I was in a line for a meal at annual conference, and I was behind a couple of people, and they were talking about the worship services at the annual conference, and I thought, ooh, so I kind of snuck in a little closer. And the comment that was made was, how come we got this English guy with this accent doing our annual conference music? And somebody else recognized me and introduced to me, and then we had to play the name game, the brethren name game. Yeah. So are you from the Pennsylvania Wrights? I said, no, I'm a little further east than that. Well, we don't know your family. And I said, you will. Anonymity is not something that we treasure and survive at. We need to be known. People can't be fulfilled if they're not known. If people feel invisible or anonymous, they can't love their life, no matter how well they try and live it. We're not talking about the need for constant praise. We just want that feeling that actually somebody does care about us and what we do. The second thing to make your life soul-sucking misery, I love that phrase, soul-sucking misery, is irrelevance. It's irrelevance. That not knowing whether your life matters to somebody or to anyone. A philosopher who deals with these things says, without seeing a connection between the life and the satisfaction of another person or group of people, a person will not find meaning. And that's the same for all of us, isn't it? If we're involved with something, we want to be a part of that. We want to own that thing and be proud of it. The New Carlisle Festival, the Facebook page. If you're from New Carlisle, is that what it's called? Yeah. People want to be a part of that. They want to join because they're part of New Carlisle. The next one is immeasurement. Immeasurement. It's a made-up word.
I wondered about that.
It's the need to be able to gauge your own progress and the level of contribution for themselves. I want to know whether or not I'm actually making a difference in somebody's life. Whether I'm the pastor here, whether I'm a friend having coffee with somebody else, whether I'm riding my motorcycle and stopping for a break and talking to people, whatever it is, I want my life to be noticed. So often we get in trouble with churches, especially with people saying, well, when pastors get together, it can be a real drag, let me tell you that. Because the first question, if you haven't seen somebody for ages, is, well, how many people go to your church now? Hundreds, I say. I don't try to actually answer that question. But it seems an ego trip. Well, I've got more members than you do. And when we tried to go on to television the first time, my colleagues all got together and kind of pulled me aside and said, you really don't want to do that, Andrew? I said, oh yeah, I do. Well, are you trying to become the next Jimmy Swaggart? No, I don't want to measure myself in numbers and popularity. I just want to make sure that my life, that I can look at it and say, yeah, I've done this. I've been here, I've been there, I've done that. I know these people, I know those people. Now let's look at the Good Shepherd for a bit. I love this picture of this fellow, by the way. It's a striking image of a shepherd. He is Pakistani. He is Muslim. And I love his attitude. I love his attitude. And the sheep are all behind him, and it's all one big cloud of dust. As they move after the shepherd, they follow him. And he's got that little lamb tucked into his hand on the opposite side, and a stick, and a look on his face that says, you don't mess with my sheep. And I think it's a perfect image. Jesus says he comes to bring life for us so we may have it abundantly. As John 10 opens in this, in the scriptures, Jesus is still engaged in a rather heated exchange with the Pharisees. And the conversation revolves around him healing this blind man on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees are acting like the ultimate bad guys. They're just being obnoxious. And they're engaged in this religious ruthlessness. They don't, if you noticed in the story, the man, we don't know his name. We don't know anything about him. He's not a personal being. He's just somebody on the side of the road that is an inconvenience if you had to step around him. There's no compassion at all. And Jesus is bringing this out, really, to the Pharisees, that they're just making life a soul-sucking misery for people. Being a shepherd in the first century was very hard. It was a life on the road all the time. You basically left your home, your family, and you were gone. And you spent your life with these creatures. You were out in the open. It was often harsh weather. Their nomadic life meant that they lived on the meager essentials in food. And they were in constant danger. Animal predators, lions, bears, wolves, human predators. Shepherds were among the poorest of the poor. And Jesus chooses to put himself into that metaphor, into that image. And he is living out what was said in Ezekiel. And perhaps you'd like to read it with me. God the Master says, "From now on, I myself am the shepherd. I'm going looking for them, as shepherds go after their flocks when they are scattered. I'm going after my sheep. I'll rescue them from all the places they've been scattered to in the storms. I'll bring them back from foreign places, gather them from foreign country, and bring them back to their home country. I'll feed them on the mountains of Israel, along with the streams, among their own people. I'll lead them into lush pasture so they can roam the mountain pastures of Israel, graze at leisure, feed in the rich pastures on the mountains of Israel. And I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep. I myself will make sure they get plenty of rest. I'll go after the lost. I'll collect the strays. I'll doctor the injured. I'll build up the weak ones and oversee the strong ones so they're not exploited." We don't pay much attention to that little scripture, do we? But my goodness, how it fits in with the Good Shepherd. I am so glad I've got a fellow a bit like this guy who will protect me. And when I feel strong, will make sure I'm not abused. And when I'm feeling weak, will just bring me up. That's very, very cool. He loves me and just wants to hold me. And Jesus says that he's setting himself up in contrast to all those people who want to take advantage of his sheep, or those who would deceive them, lie to them, and do anything else. And now Jesus gives us 3 items to look forward to in this abundant life. Number 1, being known. The opposite of anonymity. I love being known.